The revelation and the return. You know your old life no longer fits. Now what? The threshold before everything changes. And why your old life no longer fits. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. A quote from Carl Jung. What if nothing is wrong with you? What if the exhaustion, the loss of motivation, the strange distance you feel from a life that once made perfect sense isn't proof that you're lost? What if you've simply reached the point where the person you've been can no longer carry the person you're becoming? You know your old life no longer fits. You know you cannot unknow what you know. The patterns has become visible. The inner knowing has become harder to miss. Something in you has begun seeing differently, not because every answer has arrived, but because your perception has changed. And once perception changes deeply enough, the old world cannot be inhabited in quite the same way. You may still live in the same house, wake up beside the same person, drive the same road to the same job, answer to the same name, carry many of the same responsibilities, and yet something fundamental has changed, has shifted. You see what you did not see before. You recognize the pattern while it is happening. You hear the old voice before automatically obeying it. You feel the contraction in your body when you betray what you know. You notice how quickly you abandon yourself to preserve belonging. You recognize the identities you once called personality as adaptations. You see where love became self-erasure, where loyalty became captivity, where patience became postponement, where responsibility became the justification for carrying what was never yours, where waiting became a sophisticated form of avoidance, where healing itself became another waiting room. And this is where the journey becomes delicate, because there comes a point when awareness is no longer merely comforting, it becomes sobering. You have seen enough that you can no longer pretend you haven't seen. You know enough that continuing as before now requires something it did not require before, the conscious overriding of your own truth. And that has a cost. Perhaps this is where you are now. Not lost, not entirely certain, not standing comfortably in the old world, but not yet fully stabilized in the new. You have reached the place between recognition and embodiment, between what has been revealed and what you are now willing to live. And the question is no longer, when will my life change? The question is, now that I can see, how will I participate? Welcome back to the revelation and the return. Carl Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. In part 1, we descended. We explored what happens when the life you built can no longer contain the person emerging beneath it. We looked at the persona, the construct, the identities that once helped us belong, survive, succeed, and navigate the world, but eventually became too expensive to maintain. We called it energetic insolvency, because every identity requires energy, and eventually, life stops financing the identities that no longer belong to you. We entered psychological bankruptcy, not as failure, but as the moment the old structure can no longer extract enough life force to sustain the performance. We met the unlived life, the grief of the artist who never painted, the truth teller who learned to remain silent, the wild one who became acceptable, the sovereign one who confused love with self-abandonment, the dreamer who became practical, the child who learned that belonging had conditions, and we discovered something essential. The energy behind those abandoned parts never disappeared, it became sequestered. We descended to retrieve it. Because sometimes you aren't grieving the past, you're grieving the version of yourself that never got the chance to live. And beneath those accumulated layers beneath the roles, adaptations, inherited expectations, wounds, successes, fears, and identities, we found a witness, the still point, the center. Not another identity, not another improved version of the personality, the awareness capable of observing the entire movement without being reduced to any single part of it. The eye of the storm, the 0 point in the center of the spirals, the pure consciousness around which experience organizes, and from that center something becomes possible that was not possible before. You can see, discern, and choose. But this is precisely where the work becomes more demanding, because awareness without agency can become detachment. Agency without awareness becomes reaction. But when awareness and agency meet, alignment becomes possible. And alignment is not a feeling. It is not a peak experience. It is not the moment you finally become certain that nothing uncomfortable will ever happen again. Alignment is the increasingly conscious decision to organize your life from what is most deeply true, rather than from what is most familiar. And that changes everything. The sobering threshold, when you can no longer unsee the truth. There is a moment in every genuine transformation when the question changes. At first, we ask, what is happening to me? Then, why is this happening? Then, what does it mean? But eventually, after enough recognition, another question arrives, a quieter question, a more demanding one. What am I going to do with what I know now? Because insight is not embodiment, recognition is not integration. And revelation by itself does not reorganize a life. You can understand every childhood pattern and continue repeating it. You can identify every wound and continue organizing your relationships around it. You can know precisely why you abandon yourself and still say yes when every part of your body says no. You can speak fluently about consciousness, energy, trauma, manifestation, nervous system regulation, shadow work, quantum fields, and spiritual awakening and remain profoundly unchanged. Knowledge is not the threshold. Participation is. There comes a moment when you must decide whether the truth you have recognized will become merely another idea you possess or an organizing principle you live. This is the participation threshold, and it is one of the most sobering places in the human journey, because the more clearly you see, the harder it becomes to blame unconsciousness. Before recognition, the pattern simply happens. After recognition, you begin to catch yourself participating in it. You hear yourself saying yes when you mean no. You feel yourself shrinking before you do. You notice yourself reaching for approval. You recognize the impulse to explain yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you. You feel the old reflex telling you to wait, accommodate, suppress, overwork, overgive, rescue, perform, disappear, or prepare a little longer. And now there is a witness. There is a space. Perhaps only a fraction of a second at first, but there is a space between the pattern and your participation in it. That space is where agency begins. Viktor Frankl wrote of a space between stimulus and response, a space in which our power to choose becomes possible. That space may be brief, it may be uncomfortable, it may not remove fear, but once you can recognize it, you are no longer standing in exactly the same relationship with your conditioning. The pattern may still speak, but it is no longer the only voice in the room. And this is where we must become precise. Awareness does not give you control over everything that happens. It does not guarantee outcomes or eliminate uncertainty. It does not mean that every intuitive feeling is inviolable, every discomfort is a sign to leave, or every desire is divine guidance. Awareness gives you something both simpler and more demanding. The possibility of conscious relationship with your own experience, the ability to witness, to question, to discern, to feel, to choose, to respond, and then to take responsibility for that response. Not because you know exactly where it will lead, but because you are no longer willing to pretend you do not know what continuing to betray yourself costs. That is the threshold, and perhaps you recognize it. You know the relationship has changed, even if you don't yet know what comes next. You know the career no longer holds you like force, even if the new path has not fully appeared. You know the pace is unsustainable. You know the boundary, the conversation, what you are grieving, what you keep postponing, where you have confused fear for intuition, and where you have called intuition fear because truth threatened the architecture of the familiar. You may not know everything, but perhaps you know the next honest thing. And sometimes that is enough. So I want to ask you something. Not what you hope will happen, not where you see yourself in 5 years, not what you're trying to manifest, but what do you already know that you keep asking for more confirmation about? Don't rush to answer. Just notice what surfaced. Because the first answer is often followed immediately by the old construct explaining why you should ignore it. Notice that too. The purpose is not impulsive action, the purpose is recognition. And if this question touched something precise in you, write one word in the comments. I see. No explanation is required, just I see. Because sometimes the first act of conscious participation is simply refusing to look away. Albert Camus said, "In the depth of winter, I finally learned that within me there lay an invincible summer." The participation threshold. Revelation changes perception, but participation changes trajectory. There comes a moment when the waiting ends, not because every answer has arrived, not because uncertainty has disappeared, not because all the moving pieces have settled into place. The waiting ends because something within you has become unmistakably clear. You can no longer unknow what you know. The spark has pierced the surface. The pattern has revealed itself. The invitation has arrived. Now comes the question, will you participate? This is where many conversations about awakening and transformation stop too soon. They stop at awareness, at insight, at the revelation, at the peak experience, at the moment of recognition. But recognition is not the completion of transformation. It is the beginning of responsibility. Awareness reveals, agency responds, alignment reorganizes, revelation changes perception, participation changes trajectory. This distinction matters because there are people who have known for years that something in their lives must change. They have journaled about it, prayed about it, meditated on it, dreamed about it, asked for signs about it, pulled cards about it, read books about it, gone to therapy about it, watched videos about it, and continued waiting. Waiting to feel ready, waiting to be certain, waiting for fear to disappear, waiting for the entire staircase to illuminate before taking the first step, waiting for permission from people whose approval belongs to the very structure they are trying to outgrow. At some point, waiting ceases to be preparation. It becomes resistance wearing spiritual clothing. At some point, asking for another sign becomes a refusal to answer the ones already received. At some point, getting ready to get ready becomes another way of remaining exactly where you are. And there is no judgment in that, but there must be clarity, because clarity is one of the gifts of the threshold. You can resist or you can surrender. And surrender does not mean becoming passive. It does not mean abandoning discernment. It does not mean handing your agency to a teacher, a partner, an ideology, a spiritual authority, or some imagined force outside yourself. True surrender is not the abdication of agency. It is the end of unnecessary war with what you already recognize as true. It is the moment you stop using your energy to keep the old world alive after its season has ended. It is making peace with what was, for good this time, not because it was all good, not because nothing hurt, not because you approve of everything that happened, but because you are no longer willing to sacrifice the life that is here now to an endless argument with what cannot be changed. The should-haves, the could-haves, the would-haves. The different choice you might have made, the years you think you lost, the person you might have become sooner, the door you didn't walk through, the warning you ignored, the love you stayed for too long, the moment you left too soon, all the ghosts of alternate timelines that ask you to abandon this one. There comes a point when those ghosts must be released, not forgotten, integrated, because you are here now, and your life is the evidence. Everything you survived, everything you chose, you regretted, you learned, you lost, you retrieved, and everything you still do not understand. All of it has brought consciousness to this moment, not to punish you, not to imprison you in the past, but to place the key back into your hands. And now you are the key, you are the door, you are the one who sees the pattern, you are the one who can interrupt it, you are the one who decides what receives your life force next. This is sovereignty, not controlling life. Becoming conscious of how you participate with it, with its cycles. Lao Tzu said, "Nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished." Resist or surrender. Every threshold presents the same choice. When deep change becomes inevitable, resistance often intensifies. This is not surprising. The familiar has gravity. Your brain predicts through what it already knows. Your nervous system may associate familiarity with relative safety, even when what is familiar is painful. Habits become efficient through repetition. Identities become reinforced through relationships, environment, memories, expectations, and behavior. The old world does not exist only in your thought. It may exist in your schedule, your assumptions, your posture, your language, your bank account, your friendships, your family system, your nervous system. It may live in the way you respond to praise or to silence, the amount of rest you permit yourself, the love you believe you deserve, the opportunities you allow yourself to receive, the rooms you enter, the rooms you cancel yourself out of. So when a new way of being begins to emerge, you are not simply changing your mind. An entire system may need to reorganize. This is why truth can feel liberating and destabilizing at the same time. One part of you recognizes freedom, another calculates the cost and feels the hurt. One part says, finally, another asks, but who will I be if I stop being who everyone knows me to be? This is the delicate place. Do not confuse the presence of discomfort with the absence of alignment. Growth is not always comfortable. Truth is not always immediately soothing. A boundary may be aligned and still leave you trembling. An honest conversation may be necessary and still awaken fear. Rest may be medicine and still trigger guilt. Receiving may be right and still feel unfamiliar. Leaving may be necessary and still involve grief. Staying may be courageous and still require transformation. There is no formula that can replace discernment. Your inner knowing that you are exactly where you are meant to be. This is why the witness matters, as it overrides doubt and fear. Because without the witness, discomfort can automatically become danger. Fear can automatically become no. Desire can automatically become yes. Urgency or intensity can masquerade as intuition. Avoidance can masquerade as peace. Familiarity can masquerade as truth. And fantasy can masquerade as revelation. The witness does not eliminate these voices. The witness allows you to hear them without immediately becoming them. From the center, you can ask, who is speaking? Is this the voice of truth or the voice of comfort? Is this the intuition or conditioning? Is this genuine danger or the discomfort of expansion? Is this surrender or collapse? Is this patience or postponement? Is this peace or numbness? Is this love or self-abandonment? Is this my voice or the echo of a world that is already dying? Discernment takes practice. It requires humility. It requires the willingness to be wrong and to recognize you are still learning, still finding your footing. It requires us to remain in a relationship with reality rather than forcing every experience to confirm what we want to believe. But with practice, something changes. The signal becomes clearer, static and noise-free. Not louder, clearer, sharper, and more stable. And often, the deepest truth is not the voice screaming in emergency, it is the quiet knowing beneath the noise. The one that remains when urgency passes, the one that does not need to terrorize you into obedience, the one that has perhaps been whispering the same thing for years. This is why the emergency begins to lift when recognition arrives, and interference and distraction fade as awareness increases. Not because every problem has disappeared, not because the future is guaranteed, but because you finally understand what is happening. You stop treating every moving piece as evidence that you are lost. You stop interpreting uncertainty as failure. You begin learning to be comfortable in the uncomfortable, not numb, not resigned, present, rooted enough to remain with the unknown without immediately running back to what you have already outgrown. This is how you get on board with your own unfolding, not by knowing the entire destination, but by ending the war with the next honest step. And perhaps that is where you are now. You don't need another 5-year plan, you don't need another prediction, or to know exactly how everything will reorganize. Perhaps the real question is much closer. What is the next aligned choice available to me now? One honest no, one wholehearted yes, one thing released, one thing reclaimed, one decision to stop explaining, one moment in which you feel what you have spent years suppressing, one macro decision in which you choose not to abandon yourself again. Because the new life is not built only through dramatic events, it is inhabited through the radical honesty of ordinary choices. And every choice is a vote for the world you are willing to keep alive. So before we go further, I want to invite you to complete one sentence in the comments. Today, I choose to participate by, and fill in the blank. Not your 5-year plan, not the whole staircase, one honest step. Because transformation does not begin when everything becomes certain, it begins when participation becomes stronger than hesitation. When everything comes up at once, you may not be regressing. You may finally have the capacity to see the whole pattern. And there is something else that often happens at this threshold, something that can initially feel overwhelming. Once you begin to see everything about you first. Patterns that seemed unrelated suddenly reveal their connections. The relationship you choose, the role you played in your family, the way you respond to conflict, the reason you over-explain, the fear that surfaces when you are seen, the discomfort you feel when you receive, the people you rescue or avoid, the opportunities you sabotage just before they become real, the places where you become invisible, the moments when you leave yourself before anyone else gets the chance. Suddenly, you see the weaving, not one isolated behavior, the network, the associations, the architecture beneath the repetition. And it can feel like everything is coming up at once. Old memories, old triggers, old fears, old relational dynamics, dreams, emotions, body sensations, synchronicities, people from the past. Situations that seem to carry an almost uncanny resemblance to something you thought you had already resolved. You may ask, why is this all happening now? Or worse, am I going backward? But perhaps a more useful question is, what if I can see more now because I finally have the capacity to receive and process more without crashing? That distinction matters because not everything that resurfaces is a regression. Sometimes it is retrieval, sometimes it is completion. Sometimes an old pattern returns because you are meeting it from a level of consciousness that was not previously available to you. The event may look familiar, but the one witnessing it is not standing in the same place, and that changes everything. You are no longer inside the pattern, with no vantage point from which to observe it. You can see the trigger, the association, the automatic thought, the body response, the old story preparing to attach itself, the familiar behavior waiting to be activated, and sometimes you can see the entire sequence before it completes. That is significant, because the moment you can witness a pattern as a pattern, you are no longer inside it. You are no longer fused with it. In psychology, we might speak about metacognition, the ability to become aware of our own mental processes rather than simply being carried by them. In neuroscience, we know that repeated experiences create and reinforce associations across networks. One cue can activate an entire constellation of memories, expectations, bodily responses, and learned behaviors. The brain is constantly predicting through previous experience, connecting the present with what it has learned from the past. This is part of what makes deeply ingrained patterns so powerful. They rarely exist alone. They are woven. One fear connects to another. One memory activates a belief. One belief shapes a prediction. One prediction influences perception. Perception affects behavior. Behavior reinforces the original belief. A loop becomes a network. A network becomes familiar. And familiarity begins to feel like identity. But then awareness enters the system. The witness sees the weaving, and suddenly what once felt like an absolute truth can be recognized as an organization of associations, real associations, powerful associations, sometimes necessary adaptations, but not necessarily permanent instructions. This is where science and spirit illuminate different dimensions of the same mystery. Science can help us understand how experience shapes neural pathways, predictive models, emotional associations, habits, and responses. Spirit asks another question. Who is aware of the pattern? Who can witness the thought without being reduced to the thought? Who can feel the fear without surrendering all authority to it? Who can recognize the old voice and still choose differently? Science and spirit illuminate different dimensions of the same mystery. And here, at the threshold, we need both precision and humility, because the pattern is real, the conditioning is real, the nervous system is real, the emotional history is real. And so is your growing capacity to meet all of it differently. Your consciousness now shifts is real. This is why what initially feels like an avalanche may actually be increased resolution. You are seeing more because you have developed the bandwidth to hold more. You have lived enough, witnessed, fallen, risen, practiced, grieved enough, and returned to the center enough times. That what once took years to recognize may now take months. And what once took months may now take weeks. What once took weeks may take days. And sometimes, what once required an entire collapse can now be taught in a single breath. And now comes a choice. This is not perfection, this is increasing availability, increasing precision, increasing intimacy with your own inner architecture, with your full self. You no longer need a 3-act drama every time a pattern surfaces. You don't need 12 hours of commentary. You don't need to build a courtroom around every emotion. You don't need to put every feeling on trial. You don't need to ask why 100 times when the pattern has already made itself clear. You see it, you feel it, you let the information arrive. You discern what belongs to the present and what is being echoed from the past. You take responsibility for what is yours. You release what isn't, because you already know the alternative: more waiting, more suffering, more cognitive dissonance, and you feel legitimately and honestly done with the old BS belief system. You make the next honest choice and you move, not by bypassing emotion, but by no longer adding unnecessary suffering to what is already asking to be felt. This is one of the quiet signs of integration, of the collapse of the new timeline and the frequency out of superposition. You stop needing a story for every sensation. You allow yourself to feel deeply, fully, without assuming that depth is a threat, because your emotions are not enemies invading the center. They are movements occurring within a field of awareness spacious enough to hold them now. The witness does not suppress emotion. The witness gives emotion somewhere to move, and perhaps this is why the old patterns can now arrive in droves, layered, not because you are being punished, not because all of your healing has failed, not because you are back at the beginning. Perhaps they are arriving because you no longer need to spend 10 years with each one. You have developed capacity. You have developed language, field literacy, discernment, the ability to recognize the difference between a feeling and an instruction, between a memory and a prophecy, between discomfort of reconfiguration and recalibration and danger, between the old world speaking through you and your own inner voice. And this is where I want to ask you something very specific. What pattern can you now recognize in minutes that once took you months or even years to see? Don't underestimate that. Don't dismiss it because the pattern still appeared. The measure of integration is not that nothing old ever surfaces again. Sometimes the measure is that you recognize it sooner. You recover your center more quickly. You tell fewer stories about it. You abandon yourself less. You choose with greater precision without need for external validation. So if you recognize this stage, write one word in the comments. Clearer, or another word, coherent. Not finished, not perfect. Clearer, sharper, and more coherent. Aligned. Because that is enough to change what happens next. In closing, perhaps today you recognize something. Perhaps you saw your exhaustion differently, your restlessness, your loss of interest, the strange distance between the life you're living and the life you can feel quietly asking to emerge. Perhaps you realize that what you've been calling collapse may not be the end of anything essential. It may be the moment the inessential, the incongruent can no longer hold. But recognition is only the first threshold, because once you recognize that your old life no longer fits, a deeper question begins to rise. If I'm no longer who I used to be, then who I am? And perhaps an even more uncomfortable question is, who have I been pretending to be? The achiever, the caretaker, the peacemaker, the strong one, the one who never needs anything, the one who became so good at surviving, adapting, that they forgot what it felt to fully be alive. That is where our next transmission begins. So if something in you recognizes itself here, don't let this be another video you watch. Feel and forget. Stay with the journey. Subscribe, follow this series, and join me for the next transmission. Because the revelation and the return is not a collection of disconnected conversations, It is an unfolding ecosystem of recognition, a journey through the psychology, the science, the spirit, and the lived human experience of transformation, because something is shifting in the way we understand identity, healing, consciousness, purpose, and wholeness, and what it means to live as an undivided human being. Many of us can feel it before we have language for it. That's why we're here, to find the language, to recognize the patterns, to question what we've inherited, to bring the unconscious into awareness, and to consciously participate in what we are emerging to be. So before you leave, carry one question with you. What have I already outgrown that I'm still trying to carry? Don't force the answer. Watch your life. Notice where your energy contracts. Notice where you perform. Notice what has quietly become complete. And notice what begins to come alive when you stop pretending. If one word has already come to you, leave it in the comments. No explanation, just the word. Let that be your marker, your moment of recognition. When one part of a living system changes, the whole system must respond. And now that you see, how do you perfect your vision? And what happens next? Who are you now being with it? And that conversation is coming. But for now, return to the center. Notice what is here. Notice what is asking to be seen. Notice what no longer requires a story. Notice the pattern. Feel what is yours to feel. Listen with radical honesty for the signal beneath the noise. And when the next honest choice appears, meet it there, because the surface is always the last place transformation arrives. And if you know someone standing in the strange place between who they were and who they are emerging to be, share this transmission with them. Sometimes, people don't need another answer. They need language for what they already live in. Until our next transmission, stay present, stay curious, and tend the fire within. Because recognition is where transformation begins, and life is already speaking. The question is, are you recognizing it? Heal deep, rise sovereign, welcome home. Still Fire 1111. The frequency calls, the fire rises, enter at your own shift. Still Fire 1111. And if this resonated with you, subscribe to the series. Download the free ebook Energy is Everything, using science and spirit to master vibrational reality, free for subscribers of Still Fire 1111. And to celebrate my launch on Heal Me, book a free 20-minute discovery call. This is not about becoming someone else. This is about finally allowing who you are to organize your life. Heal deep, rise sovereign. The fire rises, and now it radiates. Enter at your own shift. Welcome.